Usually I report about history from our studios in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, but as you can see today, the Capitol is behind me. I'm in Madison, the big city. We're gonna head inside the Capitol and we're gonna do a tour there. Maybe not a typical tour, but we're gonna talk to a former legislator on some different things inside the Capitol building. Let's go. All right, let's start our tour of the Wisconsin Capitol, and our tour guide today is Minocqua's own Joe Handrick. Joe, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here.
So tell me about where we are right now.
Sure. Well, you know, Wisconsin has one of the best and greatest state capitals in the entire country. So we're going to take in a great tour today. I thought we'd start here in what's called the Hall of Speakers. And in this hallway, there are photos of every person who's ever served as the Speaker of the State Assembly.
Tell me about some of the Northwoods legislators. You were a Northwoods legislator yourself. Tell me about that history.
Sure. So I had the pleasure of serving under three different speakers who are pictured behind me. And the Northwoods Assembly District that I represented really came into being in 1982. Up until that point, Oneida and Vilas counties were cut between two different assembly districts, one that was based over by Crandon, one that included Tomahawk and Merrill. And then in 1982, the federal court created the brand new 34th Assembly District, which was Oneida County and Vilas counties. And the first representative from that district was Jim Halpern, a Democrat from Eagle River. And then when he retired in 1994, I had the privilege of being elected to take his place.
So you were the second assemblyman in this Northwoods district, the 34th. And just bring us to the modern history. I know Rob Swearingen carries it today. Who was in between there?
Yeah, so when I left the state assembly in 2000, a man named Dan Meyer, who was the mayor of Eagle River, took my place, and then he retired in, I believe, 2012, and then Rob Swearingen, the current incumbent, has been elected since that time.
I noticed in the corner here, your name is on the plaque in the Hall of the Speakers. Why is your name on there?
Yeah, so this Speakers Hall was created and dedicated by a special committee on the Wisconsin sesquicentennial to celebrate the 150th birthday of Wisconsin. And I actually served on that committee that dedicated this hall.
We stayed on the same floor here. We basically walked across the third floor, right outside the Senate gallery, the Senate chambers. Where are we standing right now, though, Joe?
Well, in this hallway outside the Senate gallery is a listing of every person who's ever served in the Wisconsin State Senate going back to the creation of the state. So it's a kind of an off-the-beaten-path place that most tourists don't visit, but when you look at these walls, you can see some pretty historic figures in Wisconsin politics. So for the Northwoods, the names people recognize is, one name is Clifford Tiny Krieger. He was our state senator from 1946 all the way into the 1980s. And then following him was a man named Lloyd Kincaid from Crandon, who was a Democratic state senator. At one time he was a Republican and he switched parties, and he has a colorful history. And then he was followed by Roger Bresky, a name I know many people will recognize. And then after Roger Bresky's retirement came Senator Jim Halpern for one term, and then followed by Senator Tiffany, and now just this past year, Senator Mary Felskowski takes over the reins of the 12th District.
I think one of those names warrants some extra time here. Let's talk about Lloyd Kincaid. I know he's a very colorful guy. Can you tell me why he ended up switching parties?
Well, in the mid-1970s, there was a dispute over a mining tax, and at the same time, Mr. Kincaid was attempting to secure an additional secretary in his office. And apparently the Republican leader wasn't being cooperative enough on those two issues. And one day, just out of the blue, Mr. Kincaid switched parties and said, I'm no longer a Republican, now I'm a Democrat. And then he served the rest of his years as a Democrat.
Switching parties partly over one legislative aide, that is certainly something. And I know you were telling me about Kincaidisms, some malpropisms. Can you tell me about some of those?
Sure. Senator Kincaid, very distinguished career. I knew him for a long time, and one of the interesting things about him was he had a very colorful use of the English language. And he's no longer with us. But when Lloyd Kincaid would come into the state Senate to give a speech, all his colleagues would come in too because they didn't want to miss anything. He had just some extremely well-remembered, colorful comments. The one that's probably the most famous was when he announced that he was the first senator to ever survive terminal heart disease.
Terminal, of course, means
yes.
died.
The operative word there, yeah.
Okay, we went down a floor. We are in the North hearing room. Beautiful room. Tell me about this room, Joe.
Just one of the great rooms of the state capitol. Natural light that comes in here, and the stonework in here is just amazing. It's the only room in the capitol that has this type of stonework. And if you look closely at the walls, you can see fossils in the walls all around the room, which makes this a great place for when the kids come down on their 4th grade school trip to come visit. But the legislature uses this room to hold hearings. And in fact, Representative Swearingen held a hearing in here just a couple weeks ago with his Committee on State Affairs. And the murals around the perimeter of the room are meant to depict the early part of Wisconsin's history. So the mural immediately to the front of the room depicts our first settlers, the American Indians. And then there's a mural of Nicolay landing at Green Bay and being greeted by the Native Americans, followed by a mural of the West, meant to represent westward migration and the German farmers and Irish farmers that came into Wisconsin. And then finally there's a mural showing a steamship and a train, meant to signify the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s. And it's just a great room.
So we are on top of the Capitol. Joe, tell me what we're looking at right now.
Well, we're looking out over Lake Mendota right here, and that's the Frank Lloyd Wright Convention Center down there by the lake. This wing down here over your shoulder, Dan, that's where the governor's office is. And behind me is where the state senate is. So the state capitol, unlike the U.S. capitol, of course, has 2 giant wings. Our state capitol has 4 wings, north, east, south, and west. And we're basically facing southeast right now towards Lake Mendota. But it's a great view, isn't it?
Yeah, it is beautiful. And when I think about 4 wings, we got governor, assembly, state senate. What am I missing for number 4?
Well, the Supreme Court also shares part of the east wing with the governor's office. Then the 4th wing is a combination of legislative offices, general purpose offices, and hearing rooms.
And on the opposite side of this building, maybe not quite opposite, we have State Street, famous State Street. It leads to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Do legislators ever spend time there? Is that mostly for students?
You bet. And the connection between the state capitol and State Street and the UW campus is more than a street, and it's more than symbolic. Of course, you've heard of the Wisconsin idea, and that's the idea that state government and government can work with the University of Wisconsin higher education to create good public policy for the people of Wisconsin. So it's fitting that the two are connected in that way.
Back inside the Capitol, right underneath the dome, Joe. Tell me about this area.
Well, this is a pretty amazing view from up here. Unfortunately, if you come down and take the Capitol tour, the general public isn't going to be able to come where we are right now. But it's an amazing view looking down into the floor of the Capitol and up into the magnificent dome. And this sort of just gives you a picture of just how grand and glorious this building is.
Yeah, I think we are a little spoiled here in Wisconsin with such a fantastic Capitol building. Many states don't really have this.
Yeah, this is one of the largest and most impressive state capitals you'll see anywhere. Many state capitals are really just glorified office buildings, but Wisconsin's Capitol is really a national treasure.
And when we look here at the dome, is this the end of the dome?
Well, and this is a good thing for kids to Google is the story of the dome, because the dome that we're looking at and that you see from the floor is actually just a fake ceiling that lies many, many feet below the actual concrete dome, which is outside. And there's actually a staircase that the Capitol Police and others can take that takes them actually all the way to the tippy top of of the Capitol Dome. Again, the public can't go there, but yeah, so the Capitol in Wisconsin actually has two domes, the inner dome, which makes the ceiling that we're looking at, and then the outer dome, which is made out of concrete.
Now we are in the assembly chambers. This is where laws actually get made. For the people at home, just tell us a little bit about the assembly.
Well, there are 99 members from 99 districts throughout Wisconsin. The state is divided up equally by population, and those representatives, they spend a lot of time working in committees, drafting bills, modifying bills, perfecting bills, and then here is where the assembly meets in a whole as a body to either vote yes or no on the passage of the bills. And of course, as you remember from probably from fourth grade or from the How a Bill Becomes a Law on TV, the bill then goes over to the state Senate, and if the Senate also passes the bill, then it goes to the governor, and if he signs it, it becomes law. If you wonder how did the speed limit get changed to 65, or how did the drinking age get raised to 21, this is where those type of laws get made.
So this might be a little wonkish, but from my understanding of the U.S. Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives can create bills and then they get sent to the opposite chamber?
Yes.
But here, only the Assembly can create bills?
It works the same way as the House.
Okay.
A bill can start in either house, but it has to, just like the U.S. Congress, it has to pass both houses before it can go on to the governor, or in their case, the president.
Okay, and is it simple majority in both houses?
Yeah, there is no filibuster in Wisconsin, and there's also no supermajority required for passage. It's things are passed here with 50 votes. So if 50 out of 99 representatives are in favor of the state budget, that's enough to pass the state budget.
So you spent some time here in the 90s as a legislator, and there are some kind of quirky things about this room. So let's talk about some of those quirky things.
Yeah, well, first is something that we're all really proud of. You'll see up there is an eagle, and his name is Abe. And that's a replica of the bald eagle that served a Wisconsin unit in the Civil War. He was their mascot. And legend has it that he wasn't just the mascot for the Wisconsin unit, but that he would fly and circle over enemy locations to help the Union soldiers pinpoint where the Confederate soldiers were. Then he came back to Wisconsin, and when the original Capitol burned down, unfortunately we lost Abe. So this is a replica of Abe the Eagle, and he's the symbol of the state assembly. Another interesting thing is you see this giant mural up there is there was originally a soldier painted into it, and the artist at some point decided to remove that soldier from the painting, so they painted over him and put a badger in there instead. And then about 20 years ago, when the Capitol was being restored and the paintings were being restored and cleaned, the artwork from that original soldier started to bleed through, and you can see him now as like a shadowy figure. So he's known as the ghost of the Wisconsin State Assembly.
Wow, very interesting. You can definitely tell he's kind of coming back into the picture. Well, Joe, let's head to the Capitol Rotunda and then we'll say goodbye. Okay, our tour is over. Thanks so much, Mr. Handrick, for bringing us around the Capitol. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's been fun, and I hope listeners and watchers of TV 12 can make it down to the Capitol someday and enjoy this beautiful building. We're back in the Rotunda, where most of the tours start. And if you're a kid that comes here, aged between 2 and 20, one of the rules is you have to lay on the floor and stare straight up at the giant dome. But again, if you get a chance to make it, this is one of the most incredible buildings in the entire country for state capitals. And if you live in Wisconsin and haven't been here, it's got to go on your bucket list.
Okay, and tours are going to start soon. I know they're not going on right now, but thank you for bringing me on a tour. You people at home, you might not get a former representative to give you a tour. I was lucky enough to have one. Joe, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to help.